Welcome back. Today, we're diving into the Quran, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to look at it through a really unique mathematical lens, one that some researchers think uncovers a hidden, almost architectural design. So let's just start with this one kind of mind-bending question. We all know the Quran for its incredible spiritual message, its linguistic beauty, right? But what if there's more? What if, woven right into the fabric of the text, there's a mathematical code, a blueprint? That's the rabbit hole we're going down today.
All right, so how does this work? Well, at the very center of this whole idea is something called the Quran formula. You can just think of it as a model, a proposed key that suggests the Quran's chapters, the surahs, and its verses are all connected by these really specific numerical patterns.
And this is it. This is the formula that researchers came up with. Now, the mechanics behind it can get pretty complex, but it all boils down to three key numbers that act like clues in a puzzle. Those numbers are 7, 9, and this really strange one, 1729. So let's break these down, one clue at a time. First up, our first clue, the number 7. Now, according to this theory, 7 isn't just a random number that pops up. It's supposed to represent a kind of rhythm, a pattern of repetition and cycles that you see over and over again in the text.
So where does it show up? Well, for starters, the very first chapter of the Quran, Al-Fatiha, has exactly 7 verses. That's a big one. Then you've got other chapters like 71 and 72. Both of them have 28 verses. And what's 28? It's a perfect multiple of 7. On top of that, the text itself talks about 7 heavens, which kind of adds to this number's significance.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The Quran itself seems to point to this. There's a verse that directly mentions 7 of the often repeated. Now, a lot of scholars believe this is a direct reference to those 7 verses of Al-Fatiha. So you've got this powerful connection being made right there in the text, linking the theory back to the source.
Okay, on to our second clue, the number 9. So if 7 is all about repetition and rhythm, 9 is about something else entirely. The theory suggests it's connected to enumeration, counting, and this idea of completion or finality.
Now, to understand how 9 fits in, we need to talk about something called a digital root. It sounds fancy, but it's super simple. You just take a number and add up its digits until you're left with a single digit. So for example, Surah 9 has 129 verses. You add 1 plus 2 plus 9, which equals 12. That's still 2 digits, so you add them again. 1 plus 2 equals 3. The people behind this theory use these digital roots to look for hidden connections, often tying back to that idea of counting and completion.
And check this out. This is where the math gets kind of wild. There's this really cool property with the number 142857. If you multiply it by our first clue, 7, you get 999999, all 9s. The digital root of that is, of course, 9. So the theory goes that this isn't a coincidence. It suggests that 7 and 9 aren't just separate clues, they're mathematically woven together, linking that idea of repetition with the idea of completion. All right, so that brings us to our third and honestly most mysterious clue in the whole formula, the number 1729. This is not just some random number they pulled out of a hat. In this whole framework, it's treated like a master key. It's the unique signature that supposedly ties all the other patterns together.
So what's the big deal with 1729? Well, it has a special name in mathematics. It's a taxicab number. Yeah, there's a whole story behind that involving a couple of famous mathematicians and a taxi ride. But what's important for us is its very unique property. It happens to be the smallest number you can get by adding 2 cube numbers in 2 completely different ways.
And here's what that actually looks like in practice. You can take 1 to the power of 3 plus 12 to the power of 3, and boom, you get 1729. But you can also take 9 to the power of 3 plus 10 to the power of 3, and you get the exact same number. It's this double identity that makes it so special to mathematicians. But wait, there's more. It's not just about the taxicab thing. Look at the number itself. The digits are 1, 7, 2, and 9. When you factor it, one of its factors is, you guessed it, 7, our first clue. And its digital root is 1. Researchers argue that every single one of these attributes links up directly with specific chapter and verse numbers throughout the Quran. Okay, so let's take a step back. We have our 3 clues, 7 for repetition, 9 for completion, and this weird number 1729 as a kind of unique signature. So, how do they all actually work together? How do they solve this supposed puzzle? Well, here's a really clear example of how the theory is supposed to work. Take a look at chapters 71 and 72. They're right next to each other in the Quran. And get this, both of them have exactly 28 verses. That's a multiple of 7, our first clue. But then, if you calculate the digital root for the verse count of both, it's 1. This kind of perfect symmetry, where multiple numerical patterns line up, is exactly what this formula is trying to find.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. It's a totally fair question. Couldn't this all just be a coincidence? I mean, humans are amazing pattern-finding machines. Couldn't you find weird numerical patterns in any really long book if you look hard enough? And the researchers who developed this theory have an answer for that. They totally agree. You can find numerical quirks and lots of big texts. But they argue the difference here is the consistency and how all these patterns are interconnected. It's not just one random clue. It's the way that 7 and 9 and 1729 all supposedly work together over and over. And for 1729, it's not just that the number is there, but that its very digits and its factors seem to point to key locations in the text.
So, to put this to the test, they built a computer program to scan the entire Quran, looking for connections based on their formula. And the result? The program flagged over 5,200 significant connections between chapters. That sheer number, they say, makes it really hard to just write it all off as a coincidence. And this brings us back to the why. Why even look for this in the first place? Well, the inspiration comes from the Quran itself. This verse, from that same Surah 72 we just talked about, says, "He has enumerated all things in number." For the people behind this formula, that's the anchor. It's a hint from inside the text that maybe there's a numerical layer just waiting to be explored.
So, when you boil it all down, what does it mean? The Quran formula is really just a new lens to look through. Through this lens, 7 is the rhythm of divine order, 9 is the logic of counting and completion, and 1729 is that unique signature, that special marker tying it all together. It's a framework that invites you to appreciate the Quran not just for its words, but for its hidden mathematical structure too.
So in the end, whether you see this as solid proof of a divine blueprint or just a really fascinating mathematical exercise, it definitely leaves you with a pretty cool thought. If a text that's this ancient can hold this kind of numerical complexity, it makes you wonder, right? What other hidden patterns, in this text or in others, are still just sitting there, waiting for us to find them?